Continue.
Yeah, because I'm one of the few people left, because my sister Irma knew this. My brother Joe sort of knows it, but not the details that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't stay home and talk to my mother. He was off to college, and I heard all the stories. So I was the youngest. I was left alone with her. She told me all the stories. And I listened. So where were we? We were now living in Brooklyn,
Yes.
and I started growing up.
Yes.
And we moved to the house in Borough Park that I lived in until I got married. And that was across the street from the ambulance garage of what was then the Israel Zion Hospital, and is today the Maimonides Hospital. And it was big then, but way bigger now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born there. It was a place that had, we lived directly across from the ambulance garage. They didn't come out screaming with their sirens or anything. They just drove in and out. They were very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
We would talk to the ambulance drivers, and if a ball would go in there, they'd throw it out. And then we got a little older, and we started climbing the fence to get in there. Because they had a tennis court, they had a handball court for the doctors, recreation, but nobody was ever there, so we went in, and we played handball a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the winter, they had coal, mountains of coal, to heat the whole hospital. And when it got covered with snow, we would go climb on it. And then one entrance to the hospital had a dip to go down.
Mm-hmm.
The ambulances would go drive down, and it was snowing and all, snow covered, and we'd take our sleds and go belly whopping down there. So we made, although we were kids in the city, we made use of everything we had. So that's the hospital. And then growing up, it was different, than now. There wasn't the fear of strange people. I would go outside when I came home from school, and I didn't have to come in until somebody yelled, "Betty, supper time," and then I'd go in. I was outdoors all the time,
Mm-hmm.
playing with a variety of kids that lived on the street, and ages ranged, 3, 4, 5-year range, and we'd mix up in different groups. We'd play stickball,
Mm-hmm.
it's baseball with a broomstick, used as a bat, and the ball is like just a plain rubber ball.
Mm-hmm.
The same ball we used to play handball in behind the ambulance garage. We had trees to climb, and we did. And we had games we made up and things to do. I don't know, we were busy outside all the time. Roller skating.
Mm-hmm.
I fell and broke my wrist on my roller skates. That was my first time.
How old were you?
I was about 8. It was called a green stick, because I was young and it healed up. I had a cast, and it healed up pretty quickly. I broke the same wrist years and years later when I was an adult and a grandmother and
I feel like I remember that.
yeah, same wrist. And that was from falling off the bed. I was standing up to do something on the window behind it, the bed, and fell off when I got up. So as a kid, I went to elementary school. The elementary school was about 5 long blocks away, maybe a half a mile. I didn't have to walk miles through the snow. Maybe a half a mile, though. And I did have to walk back and forth at lunchtime and walk there in the morning back, so it was 4 trips. So, and in the snow and the cold, it gets cold and a lot of rain. So when we got a snow day, that was a big deal. We didn't have too many snow days. And that was the elementary school. In elementary school, I was put with a group of 9 other kids. They didn't have a whole year, they had half years. So it was 4A and 4B. So they took the 9 of us and they skipped over 4A and we went straight into 4B. So we skipped a term.
Mm.
And I guess we were the smart ones in the class, the whole group. And we were an experiment, I think. And it worked because we all got through, no problem. It was a piece of cake for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that much different, same stuff. But I did miss learning about Henry Hudson. I had to learn that myself.
I don't even think I know who that is.
Yeah, that was in New York when you learn about your state's history.
Ah.
And I was in Brooklyn. So that was elementary school. And then I went to junior high school, which only was like a half a block away. So that was easy, peasy. And that was a lot of hard work, harder work than elementary school, because we went to different classes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we had electives. And I took typing, learned touch typing. That's what we had those classes when all the Catholic kids left the school and went to Catholic things.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of them. So the rest of us could do a variety of things, and I chose to take touch typing, which was really very good because I could touch type. I used it to work when I first went to work. Then when I got the computer, I knew how to touch type all way back since then. So it was a very good class, one of the best classes. And nothing else. I just went to school, like a kid.
Were there a lot of other Jewish kids?
Yes, the neighborhood was Jewish and Italian. More Italian, but on my street more Jewish, but in the neighborhood Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up the demographics recently, and it's become Hasidic and very religious Jewish area where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think most of it is. So that was, and what else did I do? I went to Sunday school. I didn't go where my elder siblings went to Hebrew school, Cheder they called it, and they learned the Hebrew alphabet and learned to speak a little Hebrew and all of that. I never did. I was 6 years younger than the youngest of them. There was a gap, and they were all closer in age, 4 years or something apart.
Mm-hmm.
They sent me to Sunday school at Temple Emmanuel, where I learned history of the Bible and stuff like that, all in English. I didn't learn anything. I was more interested in the history because that's what I learned. And I graduated from that, and I was confirmed. They had girls get confirmation. So I was with the whole group. We were all got that, boys and girls. We all got that. And what else? I thought of something else I would tell you about. That was my Jewish education up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And my Jewish education, I started asking questions because at home on Saturdays we couldn't turn on the lights, we couldn't do anything. So that's kind of orthodox. And I started asking, why can't we do that? It's no big deal. Just go flip it. It's no work. And they couldn't answer me. They sloughed me off. They didn't answer me. So I asked questions. And we would go to the synagogue on holidays. and the kids would run around, and then we'd have to sit quiet with the women who were separated in the back from the men who were in the front. And that was my Jewishness. And then I went to high school. I'm at a junior high now. I go to high school, and they offer Hebrew as a language option.
Mm-hmm.
I took French and Hebrew. When did I take French? Well, I took them both in high school.
Which one do you think you learned more of?
French, because I went on in college. I had to know French. I had to pass an exam with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was never good at any languages. So I kept taking different ones. The only thing I remember from Hebrew is Lo medaberet ivrit, which means I don't speak Hebrew. But I was competing, or I was in a class where most kids had gone to cheder, like my elder siblings had, and they knew the alphabet, which was so strange to me. And I had a lot of catching up, and nobody thought to give me any help to catch up, so I had to do it on my own. So after 3 years of Hebrew, there were 2 different Hebrew teachers in this school. You know, in New York, you have to take state regents exams in order to graduate from high school. I took the state regents exams, and I got an 80 in Hebrew. And they both came down the hall, and they said, "How did you do it?" They never expected me to pass it. "How did you do it?" I said, "I studied very hard." So I passed Hebrew. Never, ever wanted to see it again. French I took, and that was somehow easier. Well, first of all, the letters were the same letters. I could make them out.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of cognates, French words, same as English words. So that helped. And then I took geometry. Remember I told you about that sled thing? Well, we went belly flopping, and I got a ruptured appendix. This was my first term in high school, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not a dainty little girl. And I missed the first 3 or 4 weeks of high school. And in the meantime, my sisters had gotten married. My 2 sisters got married to twin brothers.
Oh.
Yeah, the Hoffman boys. Yeah, I'll tell you about them. But I missed geometry. And all my other classes, there was no problem. They assigned things for me, and I caught up. But geometry was like beyond me. Fortunately, my new brother-in-law was living in the house with me. He knew all about geometry, and he got me through geometry. He taught me geometry. And he was so aggravated. He says, "Why can't you learn this stuff?" He got very aggravated, but geometry and I just didn't mix. But I passed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I passed the Regents exam too. So I did it with a lot of struggle. I was a good, solid B student in high school. 80% average when I graduated, which is neither here nor there. But you have to know who I was going to school with. You'd have to know who all the other kids were.
Mm-hmm.
There were a whole lot of very smart Jewish kids that I went to school with. I wasn't very Jewish. I didn't do Jewish things, but there it was. It's just part of my world. And so I'm in high school, and my sisters married the twin brothers. It was in the newspaper. It was a big deal. 2 sisters married twin brothers. My brothers-in-law, the second one just died recently. The first one died a number of years ago. They were both in the Second World War. One was a lieutenant, I think one became a captain. They were both overseas fighting in the real war. And one was in the Pacific and the European. And the other one was in Salerno and the whole Italian thing. And he, Peninsula, and he was in the fighting. The one that went from the Pacific to there, he was they didn't want him to fight, they wanted him to do something, I don't know, some engineering type thing. I don't know. But I'd have to ask. His son is the only one who would know now.
Was that the one who taught you geometry?
What?
Was that the one who taught you geometry?
Yeah, that's the one that taught me geometry. That was him.
That makes sense.
Yeah. He wasn't an engineer though, he became an accountant. When he came back from the war, they went to City College in New York for free, and they both became accountants. Then my sister went there and she became a statistician, which she never used. So all these people with numbers. Then I went to, when I finally got to college, I'm jumping around a little bit. When I finally got to college, I took accounting, because after all, I'm going to be good at accounting too. I took Accounting 101, all right, I passed it, I got a B. And then I took Accounting 102 and I said, this is not for me. I don't understand what's going on. And I dropped out. However, that held me in good stead because with Accounting 101, for a summer job, I could become an accounts receivable clerk. And then I went on to learn how to be a bookkeeper. I never took Accounting 102. I never needed it. I just learned how to be a bookkeeper. And those were the jobs I held as I went through college.
Well, let's pause for right now.
Okay.